And welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. It's been a long time. Hello, it is I, the old hunter, as usual, with my usual two co-hosts.
Hello, Knight of Green, Soulsborne martial artist, and weapons enthusiast.
Hello, the dog is Soul VA here. Your local from Dark Souls comic dubber here and aspiring voice actor.
And yours truly, the old hunter, who's basically the YouTube reviewer and main co-host and main and I'm basically the main star of this podcast, along with my two co-hosts, of course. So it's been a while, gentlemen, hasn't it?
Oh yes, very much indeed.
Feels like an eternity since we last got together and just talked about things. So how have you been? Let's catch up a little bit.
Well, I've been perfectly fine. Got fresh done out of college right now, so I'm basically taking the time to spend time with family and such.
Is it a good thing?
And I'm also getting time to crank up some gameplay with eldenring, since I'm very excited for the DLC. And I'm also getting some more news on Armored Core. Not to mention, I am also very much excited for other upcoming games, such as Metal Gear Solid 3 Remake Snake Eater.
Indeed. I think it's been a long time coming. Dream, how have you been?
Just been dealing with my kids, working with animation projects, and finishing up the school year for myself. Just, that type of stuff.
Good to know. Oh yes, isn't it almost the summer holidays at your schools?
Yes.
I'm not too familiar with when American kids start their school holidays. So give me a little example before we get into. We've got lots of time.
So for us, we're gonna start our summer break. We're starting our summer break the 16th of this year.
Oh, the 16th of June.
Yes.
Oh, I keep, when I was going, I think in England, school holidays start a little earlier. Summer break. Let me look it up quickly. Break UK this year. Summer starts at the 29th of June. Oh, that's a little longer than I thought. That's almost 12 additional days.
Right.
And then school tends to finish at the 2nd of. Summer holidays start. Oh, there's the summer term holidays, 29th of June to the 2nd of July, and then the proper June. No, May to June. So the 29th of June, May to the 2nd of July, and then the proper summer holidays start on the 24th of July and end the 31st of October. So proper summer holidays are a month in. Thinking about it, I never complained though. Guess you kind of get used to it. Christmas holidays were short, only 2 weeks a year.
Right.
Anyway, besides the point. So anything interesting happened for you two for a bit? I know.
Not really that much. I've been trying to take a break from all voice acting and stuff like that, trying to recuperate myself and get a flame back going and running because I'm a little burnt out at the moment. However, no, I haven't gotten that much relaxation, mind you, since there's been a lot of disappointing AAA titles nowadays whenever I do get to relax and have some me time.
Sadly, that's why we play the Souls games to basically wait it about, but even they have a limit.
Yes. Eventually, you always want to try something new. You always don't want to keep playing the same thing over and over. Although I will admit, I would, if it came to push and shove, I would rather choose Elden Ring and the Souls games over any other game for an eternity. But it's still nice to try new things.
I think I can agree with that. right? Right, Green?
Agreed.
I've been getting into other games so far, but I think I've realized the sort of games I'm a sort of side genre. I never thought like games like, for me, Subnautica and all that really do hit a certain addiction pleasure for me. Like I think Stardew Valley, Subnautica, and Terraria seem to hit my addiction receptors pretty nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know what's about those games, but they certainly give me that addiction rush.
Mm.
Anyway, speaking of From games, we've got a couple on news about those, don't we, guys?
Oh, we sure do.
I believe one's about Armor Core and the other one's about Sekiro. And so let's go with the Armor Core one.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure that
Let us begin.
Also, make sure to join the stream, Green.
Yep.
We got a lot of things coming along.
We had the Fires of Rubicon trailer for Armor Core.
Gameplay trailer. We've been waiting forever for that.
We're close to Rubicon. Wake the dog up.
Handler Walter verified. Activating cerebral coral control device.
Oh, hey, Tata. Oh, someone joined. Hey, Tata. Oh, someone from my server. Enjoyed the show, by the way, Tata. Looks pretty good, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Augmented human C4621 has awakened.
That's impressive.
One of the infamous Handler Walter's hounds. Interesting. You ready to climb the wall?
Call sign Raven. Priority subject for termination. High on the list.
A coral response from the generator. Watch out.
Why hide behind another's call sign?
Let's see how far they can fly. On borrowed wings.
Oh, it's coming to PS4 as well.
Very interesting. Very interesting indeed.
That wasn't okay. That was a lot to unpack. It's what 3 minutes. It's only 2 minutes, and it had a lot of going.
Ah, yes. Very much.
Hey,
Beautiful visuals, I will say. Definitely takes the movement from 4 and 5.
and I didn't play those two, but definitely the graphics are poor.
Mm-hmm.
Let's also not forget the fact that. Okay, I don't even know how to explain it. That was amazing, wasn't it, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Wowzers. Say something. I'm flabbergasted with, like...
Well, over here we can basically see some of the beautiful visual shots, like this for an example. Some of the scenery we can see in a foundry and stuff like that, and most likely it takes place within some sort of factory, from what we could tell, and military base. Although, judging from the amount of robots and the amount of customizable appendages, I believe that you will be able to replicate this and basically get some different results and such.
Darc, by the way, could you quickly turn the settings and the graphics to the highest settings, like 420 and HD? It's not lower. See.
Well, they're on the highest on my end.
No, I meant on the YouTube. I meant on the YouTube.
Alrighty.
Sorry, I was not maybe 1080p would be more than enough.
Alright, if you insist.
I insist.
Still have to say, the gameplay trailer is pretty damn beautiful.
And feel free to go full screen as well.
Mm-hmm.
It does look beautiful.
Yes.
Wowzers.
Now, so we can tell by basically, due to all of this action fire going on over here, I think the story mode is going to be somewhat interesting, and this, for a fact, this looks like a prime example of a good and interesting boss fight from what I could tell. I can't wait to see how they can replicate this and such. Hopefully it isn't as difficult as Dark Souls and such, but if it is, so be it.
I don't think they're that gruesome with one of their older IPs. Let's also not forget that Armored Core is literally one of From's oldest IPs compared to Kingsfield. It's notwithstanding Kingsfield.
True. That is very true.
Though, it gets me wonder if it will... Go get... Wowzers. I think we got, charged up area AoE attacks. That would be pretty impressive. Ooh, maybe we have, a form of co-op, if you know what I mean.
I believe they will. I mean, it seems like that's going to be accessible in those types of games.
Yes, very much.
Yeah, look, pause it right there. Go back up a bit.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
There are two robots. Pause it. There are two robots, so it's possible, maybe either that's a NPC, or that's just basically saying, "Hey, you can basically summon help."
Yes, I do believe that. Although my question is that if it's just going to be multiplayer altogether, or will it just be single player and follow the same routes of what usually Dark Souls and such?
True, but that means there's no pause screen. Shame. I think it was at least nice to have a pause screen, right?
Oh yes, it very much was.
That thing, wowzers, the combat looks a lot faster.
Uh-huh.
I feel like this game is taking more, those old Gundam arena battle games? The ones I'm talking about. Maybe they took a bit more influence from those.
I'd say the speed of movement is the same as 4 and 5, if not a little bit more fluent and faster. Just by looking at it. But that is my interpretation of how basically the combat will be and such, considering that I have played Armored Core 4 and 5.
Yeah.
Which, I've never played them. I've only played Armored Core 5, but this definitely is going to make me interested in playing the 6 game. This definitely's got me interested. You, Darc?
I'm actually very intrigued, especially not to mention I want to see how the story will go and such. Because, as you said, this does remind us of Gundams and such, and who doesn't want to basically go into space and kill each other with lasers?
It's
pretty much.
It's ironic that Armored Core and Gundam never had a crossover. It seems like prime material. Again,
Well, I mean, if they probably monetize it enough and they can do sponsorship, then maybe, but that's probably if they can get the copyright on allow that and such.
Right? The game's being published by Bandai Namco, correct? And
I believe so.
Who owns the Gundam franchise? Bandai Namco.
Is it Capcom? No.
Bandai Namco owns the franchise, so maybe they'll do like a crossover. Like, this is the first Armored Core game in what, a decade? Like
Yes.
PS3? More than a decade.
Very much. Now, mind you, I think like it's either they can do like a cross like tie-in with either Gundams or a different IP, mind you. It would be Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Yeah.
I think that would also be a nice touch.
Mm.
Although I'm not sure that how would tie into the story and such. Probably it'll just be cosmetics, mind you, but it is still a nice thought to think of. Because, mind you, this entire area over here, this facility, just screams atmosphere.
If that's one thing about if that's one thing about From, they definitely know about atmosphere.
And good world building. I hope we get to explore all of this. And I hope some of this stuff is basically interactable, such as these buildings and such. Because, mind you, when I'm a giant mech, I want to destroy buildings when I'm having a giant fight with another mech.
Yes.
Maybe they will do semi-destructible area, not fully destructible, because that would be terrible. Maybe semi-destructible, so like buildings and those things get destroyed if you accidentally shoot them. So maybe like strategic battling. So like if you destroy those things, if they hold gas or something. So maybe.
Oh yes, these. Have you ever seen what happens when these things explode? They usually explode in a giant fiery ball of death.
Oh, very true. So maybe we could have that sort of thing. Be cool. Oh, speaking of which, you know, okay, so it turns out that who makes the Eva figures is Toho, the owners of the Godzilla.
Evangelion.
Yeah.
Evangelion, yes.
Yeah. So, ironically, if I remember correctly, Takara and Toho actually made a crossover once. They made actually a Eva Optimus Prime.
Oh yeah.
Long story, very short. Very short. Basically, it takes place on Earth during the Angel battles. The Autobots arrive when Starscream merges with an Angel and becomes Star Angel.
Sorry, that's cool.
And basically,
I don't know why, but that made me laugh. I just imagine a My Little Pony name. I don't know. I do not know why, but my bad.
Yeah, but anyway, the point, going a little off topic, but basically, I guess basically Optimus Prime scans Eva Unit 1 and basically grows to Eva size and gains his colors as well as the Matrix turning red. Anyway, that's besides the point.
Regardless on how you slice it, these visuals alone can carry the game somewhat a little bit far, but mind you, visuals alone cannot guarantee a good game. So and the gameplay, from what I could tell, if we were to look at it like I would say over here, I hope this segment right over here isn't just a cutscene. And remember in Dead Space, the remake, fellows, and Dead Space 2, on how Isaac Clarke could basically move around and such?
I didn't play Dead Space.
Well, usually in the zero gravity sections, I hope you'll be able to maneuver your robot somewhat faster and somewhat in a similar way like to this here, because I think interacting with that will be able to add so much possibility.
I don't think they're gonna go Metroidvania like the Souls games. That's definitely not Armored Core's things, isn't? If I remember correctly, when playing Armored Core 5, it's a mission-based game, so I wouldn't get your hopes up with that being. That is amazing.
Yes, this right over here screams Shadow of the Colossus to me, and I hope that we can be able to destroy this thing.
It's tiny compared to that thing. Fantastic. Okay, I know I shouldn't. Fromsoftware. From has managed to make me hit the series 3 times for me. Sekiro, Elden Ring, and Dark Souls 3. We can all agree that those games had lots of hype behind them. Elden Ring especially. Let's not forget last year's whole...
Oh, yes. Elden Ring was probably the most hyped up game ever.
From delivered. It had a few technical issues, but it went perfectly. The game.
Well, regardless on the technical issues, it's only done with like optimization and basically frame rate. But the premise of the game was just so good, we played it regardless.
So cool. Go back a second. Go back to when that
Mhm.
go back a little bit more. Oh, that look. You're riding on those No, okay, right here.
I don't think you're actually riding on anything.
Yeah, no, you're not. You're basically driving on those. Keep playing. We'll show you in a minute. No, that's cool.
Yes. I think he was just flying in the actual air.
It was.
And so if this is true, I'm actually really excited on how they can use this for actual gameplay. Because, mind you, flying in a giant mech with giant machine guns to rain down upon your enemies is a very, very cool concept.
It's also tricky to get right because, you're sitting duck unless you got good movement. Can I keep playing? That's cool. Oh, that's cool.
That's a cool enemy. That reminds me of the super droids from Star Wars.
The droidicas.
Yeah, the droidicas.
Mm-hmm. That favorite.
They even look like them.
Let's hope Disney doesn't sue.
Yeah, let's hope.
I don't think they won't.
Okay, that's my favorite part. Look, you're on treads. Whoa, you just go right through and do a Tokyo drift, everybody. You just...
I still can't wait for this one specifically, because this one probably has the most, I would say, ominous aesthetic, because the whole scenery reminds me of the giant dragon fight.
You know what this kind of reminds me? Remember the Shadow of the Colossi?
Ah, yes.
The worm enemy that was basically that big worm enemy that tunnels under the ground? Kind of reminds me of that. And let's not forget, Miyazaki does love Shadow of the Colossus and Ico. In fact, he would say that Shadow of the Colossus was his biggest inspiration all of the time. No, it was Ico and Shadow. No, it kind of reminds me, imagine, what Miyazaki is a master in making atmospheric games alone. Jesus. Right?
Yes. He really is.
This place reminds me, this world looks like it's basically just been addicted to something. It's been burnt by whatever the fires of by Rubicon. It's like it's been burnt, and now the ash skies are basically colored gray ash. Wowzers.
This reminds me of basically the calm before the storm and such.
It reminds me of the we fought Gale.
Yeah.
Ah, yes, it does give that aesthetic. Although that one seems a little bit more darker gray than this one, and this reminds me of a grayish snow.
I now make myself sad because I remember that Gale was the final boss of Dark Souls 3.
Yep.
We're sad. We're still sad about that, right, guys?
Unless you count that NPC fight after you fight him.
No, we don't count that.
I
do always like 4. Gale.
Alright, good.
Alright. Sorry, it's just I missed Dark Souls 3. But yeah, this game looks fantastic. And I wonder, are those things your charge up moves? Basically you get enough charge and boom.
It probably looks something like that. It's probably the equivalent to a sorcery attack, mind you, or maybe a super attack.
Looks really cool.
Boy, oh boy.
I can't wait to see what mechs you can make. That would be fun, wouldn't it?
I can't wait to see what mechs we make as well. It will be the most interesting.
Maybe we can make a tank. One of us could make a tank. Big and slow, but basically lots of defense. And one of us could be light armored but fast, and someone in between the middle.
Right.
That would be pretty cool. So, I gotta say, you guys looking forward to this game?
Oh, definitely.
Well then, we've got something more to look forward to. Because we've got basically news about Sekiro. 4 or 5 years since it came out?
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing that even after so long, the game still got some reputation. In fact,
Mhm.
if we pause that and move on to the next segment,
Ah, yes.
we talk about basically the rumored case of a Sekiro anime. Now,
Mhm.
I know that recently, like, remember we talked about Nier Automata's anime? That way we didn't,
Mm.
but we talked a bit about it, but about how we were surprised it's getting an anime adaptation.
Yes.
I actually posted this on another server, and people thought this was a live action. I had to say this is not going to be a live action; it's going to be an animated series. But nonetheless, it's still cool. Anyway, let's read
I
this.
think it'd be very hard to replicate a live action version of that.
Uh-huh.
It's it's possible, mind you, but it's probably easier just to do an animated version.
Let's just do you want to say something?
Imagine live action owl.
Like, yeah.
Yikes.
Like
Okay.
but I've heard like unrelated. Just to quickly just say this, but I've heard recently that Sony might be interested in making a live action Demon Souls show, similar to what they did with the
I would
Last
do
of
that.
Us.
I would watch it.
I would love to see that. I would love to see that.
Same here. Anyway, let's listen to what this article has to say.
All right. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice could be the next video game to get an anime adaptation. That's according to a brief leak from Twitter user Okaf. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right.
Let's just not bother with the name.
Who predicts that a Sekiro anime, apparently in the works at an unannounced Japanese studio, will be announced soon. Perhaps at next week's PlayStation Showcase, if we are lucky. Okifa has a history of sharing early reveals and even still images from anime across the industry. Just last month, the account correctly predicted the release of a now confirmed anime for the manga Medalist, for example.
Medalist? I've never heard of that series before.
Said,
Have you?
there's ample reason to treat this rumor with hefty skepticism.
Obviously,
Yes.
because this would be the
So-
first ever Fromsoftware property that's getting a proper anime adaptation. And, like, you know the thing with, like, Fromsoftware things? They're not easily translated to full-fledged stories.
Yeah,
Mhm.
especially all the interconnecting storylines and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Remember the... Ugh. Anyway,
I just hope they don't butcher it.
Yeah.
So this
Agreed.
right here is the tweet. And mind you, we can all take this with a grain of salt.
We're not saying that it is happening, but more like it might happen. So don't take our words for it, everybody.
Mhm. First of all, the chain of tweets unveiling this leak is needlessly confusing, which may partly be due to Japanese to English hangups. But that's a minor problem compared to the childish riddles that all leakers seem to insist on using instead of actual words that people can read. Ooh, burn! Oh. Now, Oka previously tweeted a bunch of symbols with a short PlayStation Studios reel, and apparently this was part of some master plan, which may also be teasing a Ghost of Tsushima anime. Oh,
So basically, two samurai-like Souls-likes are coming.
yes.
I wouldn't say Ghost of Tsushima is a Souls-like. Apologies.
A masterful Souls-like game, or a amazingly surprising story about a samurai turned Ronin ghost
So
of
here we
the
go.
land of Tsushima.
So basically, we've got two series. One set in the Sengoku period, and the other set... When was Ghost of Tsushima set? The main...
Whenever the Mongols try to take over.
Well, I'll look it up.
We'll worry about that later when we actually get information regarding that leak is somewhat legit.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not confident in that, though, and it doesn't help that the clip shared with the tweet about the alleged Sekiro anime is just cut from an old Ghost of Tsushima cinematic trailer.
By the way, it's set in the Kamakura period.
Now, what PlayStation Samurai game are we talking about here? And what sort of adaptation is it reportedly getting? we already know about the Ghost of Tsushima movie, after all.
Mm.
These are excellent questions, which will hopefully be officially answered soon. For now, keep Sekiro anime on your mental back burner. In fairness, though, a Sekiro anime isn't that far-fetched. It does already have a manga starring Hanabe the Undying, after all, and the Soulsborne library has only become more multimedia since its release. Elden has a manga, which is launching in English in just a few days, actually, and Bloodborne has yet another comic, so what's an anime at this point?
Okay, first of all, I didn't know Sekiro had basically a manga detailing that immortal swordsman, did you?
Oh, yes, I did.
You didn't decide to inform me?
I thought you already knew.
I don't keep up with everything. Second of all, Ghost of Tsushima is going to get a movie adaptation? A live action thing or something?
That I have not heard. And I'm actually interested on how they'll be able to replicate that.
And third, I'm not pleased with that Elden Ring manga. I was hoping in the style of something like Berserk, but all we got was a comedy.
Yeah.
Hey, here's one funny panel that I keep bringing up that basically make a bit of my brain die. Basically, what does Ronnie look good in? A maid outfit? Standard outfit? Which was an actual debate in the manga panel, mind you.
Wow. How riveting.
So Frank basically permitted someone to basically say, let's decide which one looks better. And they also made basically the main protagonist what was the class that basically starts off with nothing? The Depraved or something?
Depraved, yeah.
Yep, and that basically is his starting class. You know, the only person that takes that class are people who with a heart really want to get to, what's the word I'm looking for? Handicap?
Versions?
So, people have been saying, oh, you judge the manga too hard. I was hoping something along the lines of a Berserk. Not something along the lines of, it's a good comedy. I don't know. Konosuba?
Yes. Comedy is the last thing I would expect from a Bloodborne thing.
Or
Right.
Elden Ring. Not Bloodborne's comic is pretty interesting. I need to get it and read it. But the point is that I'm looking forward to seeing the Sekiro anime if it's coming out. It's definitely worth it, isn't it?
I hope so, but like I said, take it with a grain of salt.
I know. How would you guys think they would animate the whole thing?
Well, that's difficult to say. I know if Mappa House were given the rights about it, they would probably maybe do it justice, but that's a solid maybe. Because they are known to butcher things. But mind you, they are doing success with Attack on Titan right now.
That's good. Could you just guys talk about that between yourself? I just need to get some.
Alright. And now, I believe, now, what was the... Alright. There was an anime company that, that animated, One Punch Man, and I believe, if I am pulling up right here, I'll be able to talk about that. Alright, so basically it was yes, Madhouse. There it is.
So you would like Elden Ring's the Sekiro anime to be done by Madhouse?
Well, it's either Madhouse or Mappa or something like that, because, mind you, the One Punch anime was really well done. So I feel like I said they'll probably do it justice.
Wait, Death Note was animated by Madhouse?
Oh, you don't know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So was Overlord?
Yeah, so was Overlord. Overlord 2, Overlord 3. basically got Perfect Blue, and then we got Claymore, and a whole bunch of others.
I always thought Claymore felt kind of Souls-esque, didn't you?
Yeah.
So at least I wasn't the only one thinking that.
Yeah. I'm very surprised they did Hunter x Hunter, and I also hear that people say that one's somewhat good, but these two are the main one, such. And now, if they were to get the same aesthetic and same approach to an anime with that, I hope Madhouse does it well. It's either that or Mappa.
Or Trigger.
Now, if they want to do a more hopeful one, I would also suggest Wit Studios. They were the company that took on the first, second, and third seasons of Attack on Titan before Mappa took the wheel.
I keep forgetting, why did they switch studios midway?
Because the time restraints, and also the amount of budgeting and the amount of time and dedication it took. So, mind you, Wit couldn't get it done in time with the deadline.
And I feel like, I think also for the record, I think Attack on Titan is the prime example of making sure you put your money where your mouth is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the final season of Attack on Titan. Whoops, we should have split it into 2 more seasons. We should have split the season 4 and season 5. Nope.
Yep.
I could have said they could have just backtracked the statement saying it was a miscommunication, saying that this was not the final season. But no.
Yes.
I say that I was being stupid. I was thinking.
Yeah, but what about that ad revenue? They need to get all that money.
That too, but I feel like they could have just basically saying we're going to backtrack that statement and say it was.
No. You see, that would actually be logical, and that's something that Mappa did not want to do.
Shame that I was the only one with logic at the then. Anyway.
But yeah, those are basically some of the anime companies that I also hope that they do. And mind you, another company that I recommend is basically the same anime studios that did Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Mm-hmm.
That would be
but
fun.
Like I said, it's still up in the air, and regardless on who takes it, it's always important to do a background check.
That's true.
Because we all know because someone did not do a background check on the anime company that took the Berserk thing that did the awful CG, and we all know how that turned out.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I did review that Berserk anime, and I did criticize the CG was horribly done. But besides the CG, it was competently well toned. But
yeah, it was well toned. In fact, some of the 2D parts of it are good. It's just overshadowed by the amount of just Play-Doh-esque figurines.
I did look in my review. I did give them some leeway, saying that basically this was the late 2016s. So I gave them some leeway on that front. More than I should have, and I bet more than most people would have. That basically the animation is atrocious, but besides that, I basically gave it somewhat of a leeway.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
anyway, we've got one more thing to talk about, and this one, my friend, is for you. We decided to. I scoured looked a little around for some YouTubers, so I thought, you know what? We have a sword specialist here. Let's talk about some things sword related. So. You can close that. So I basically found this old video about, how the big old collection between katana versus longsword and that old jazz since grade.
Yep.
So I thought, why don't we do something about your ally, since you are the swords expert here on my podcast? Thankfully you are. So I got this one.
So let's go into a little depth and talk about this video and give a few critiques and also some praises, if need be, about the katana versus the long sword. An age-old question that's been throughout the ages of history: the knight versus the samurai.
I think it's
katana versus long sword. A tale as old as time. Both technological marvels of their age. These are some of the most iconic weapons.
Thank you. I was going to say quickly that I think it's more of a recent time because you know how anime fans and all that. Also, could you turn the volume a little down? I think it's a bit too loud on your end. You can't hear me.
All right.
Thank you.
Very well.
Let's play it.
Ever made. But which sword is objectively better?
Also, Green, this is your
Are
time to shine,
neckbeards
so feel
more
free to
cringe
critique
than
when you see
weebs?
something wrong. Okay?
I know.
Well, we're about to find out.
Turn it up a little bit. It's too quiet.
So, pause, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So I find it funny that the discussion is about swords versus swords, and as someone that does like swords, don't get me wrong, I love swords, but people act like swords were these like end-all be-all super weapons, but polearms were actually far more important on the battlefield than any sword would. Swords are just basically there for when your polearm broke or you got stuck in something. It's not some like ultimate weapon, which is kind of hilarious. This would, I know it's like, I guess because it's like, oh, this is the swords or whatever, but it's like, that's like, say you have like firearms, right? And then you're comparing like each other's pistols with each other. It's like, what?
Oh, you mind going full
So,
screen?
you see what I'm saying, like in that context?
Yes, I very much do. I very, very much do.
Because it would be like comparing, you both have, what was it, freaking firearms, and then you both whip out boxing gloves and say, which of our boxing gloves are better? Like, but no. But the point I'm trying to make is that it's kind of ridiculous when you think of it like that, and especially when you consider the fact that longswords and katanas weren't even in from the sword standpoint, right? Like let's just ignore polearms, let's ignore bows, let's ignore like ranged weapons, right? Let's ignore all that for a second, right?
Yeah, let's forget all about range and safety, and let's get up close and personal and dangerous.
Yeah, like ignoring all that. Here's the funny thing about it: longsword and katanas weren't that common even as battlefield weapons. They were largely dueling weapons. I'm not saying that they didn't exist, and they were variations that were battlefield, but from what's the evolution of them. So, for example, most battlefield quote-unquote katanas were longer because they were made to basically be like... Because again, if you're fighting with polearms, right, what's the point of having a shorter sword if you could just make the sword longer and you can outrange or have comparable reach to polearms? So, again, this is basically like arguing boxing gloves versus like, oh yeah. And again, longswords and katanas were used in battle, but were they the primary weapons? Most likely not, because again, polearms, longer swords, because they were great swords. Like, for example, Zweihanders. Zweihanders were a battlefield weapon, and they're basically long swords on crack. But again, I love swords. I love long swords. I love katanas. But again, this is like comparing like kitchen utensils versus actual like full-fledged battlefield weapons. Not saying they are. But no, sorry, continue.
I would hate to hear your opinion on the Masumune that Sephiroth wields with one arm.
Okay. It's like if you shave off about a fourth of the blade and make it a bit more reinforced on like the spine, it could be a functional battlefield weapon. Like not him wielding it with one hand though. Like fatten the spine so it can take the impact. Shorten it just like a fourth of it. Like make it a thick blade. You can make an executioner's weapon with that pretty easily. Because what would happen is with the samurai. So this is kind of like the sad thing when it comes to like knights and samurai, right? Is that most of the people who are of higher noble classes, they didn't want to like get too involved in battles if they could avoid it. So they generally carried larger weapons. And they sort of like hanged out in the back to like pick off people that were weakened or tired. And so there would be a benefit having a longer sword, because not only is it a status symbol, but it's like, hey, I can outrange you while you're already tired and just like bonk you. And you couldn't really do much to defend against that because it just had that much mass just cleaving into you. So, does that make any sense?
Yes, that makes total sense.
Basically, not saying they're cowards because they're still walking on the battlefield, but basically, if you're walking around with a large sword, you're basically the guy who's just there to just like, pick off people that are weak. But no, continue.
Okay.
What about the Dragon Slayer?
That's
You have better luck. Honestly, the Dragon Slayer, you're better luck loading that into a ballista.
I would like to that. All right, load the Dragon Slayer.
You would have far more. I mean, that is the effect.
Oh, you know this is basically.
Oh, Kill la Kill, and some other anime that I don't know about.
That's ReZero. You can skip the intro, I think.
Nice goatee, bro.
Skip the intro.
Alright.
Or the longsword. Now I see a lot of videos on this topic, so I figured as somebody who generally loves both swords, I could take a crack at it. To make things fair, I purchased a katana and longsword from the same manufacturer, Ronin, both priced around $350.
$350.
Pause. First off, and this is sort of the sad reality of it. Basically, you are testing longsword and katana made with modern day steel, modern day forging techniques, correct? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's not technically
that's already an unfair test because what is essentially happening is the katana is, for lack of better terms, getting a boost. Because back in the day when katanas were made, do you know why they weren't double-edged swords?
Because explain, please.
Because the steel that they made couldn't afford or wasn't really strong enough to be double-edged. And because of that, they had to reinforce the spine and reinforce the profile of it so at least it had one cutting edge. Because otherwise, if they tried to make it double-edged, it would snap, hitting pretty much anything.
So that's...
Yeah, and I also... Wasn't it also because of the forges weren't as powerful enough and they were like using like hot clay and such to basically try to get that edge?
So can I...
Yep.
Green,
it was the forge. Yep, you're correct.
So Green, okay. Here's a question for someone who's not so familiar with the forging process of longswords and katanas. So in Europe they used coal, correct? So they would use what would they use to heat up the metal?
So with the furnaces, they would use charcoal. Actually, they would use charcoal for heating up the furnaces, and they would do so depending on what time period you went to. There were different because I'm assuming because that's the thing though. What period are we forging the longswords in? Because depending on what time period we are, we could have different forging techniques. So, for example, the Damascus steel process is one of the world's strongest ways of forming a sword. Japan did not have Damascus steel during the time of the heyday of the katana. So it's like, again, what are we? They basically so this test is already invalid because it's like saying, oh, let's because they're made by the same manufacturer, so they're going to make them with the same modern day forging process. Yeah, so that's already nullifying. That's basically giving katana a slightly. It's basically buffing it. What's it called? Off the get go.
Okay. You want to continue?
Yeah.
And now here's my question. Now, technically, in order to forge steel, you need to have a fire that I believe that's over 10,000 degrees or something, or is it 15,000?
Yeah. Actually, I can pull up ideal. I don't actually know the actual temperatures offhand, so I'll be honest. So ideal temperatures.
Because I technically have a forge myself, and I actually have used and created metals stuff, and I created a makeshift knife. Now, mind you, it didn't cut that well, but that's probably because I didn't know how to create an actual thing. But I did as best as I could.
You don't need it that hot. Ideally, you want actually 2,100, 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. So you could do that in what was it, crucibles. If you can get a crucible, you can actually create that pretty easily and sustainably.
Green, if you're going to measure in Fahrenheit, could you be adhere to convert it to Celsius, please? I don't
convert it to Celsius. So 2,000.
I don't use the Fahrenheit system. Remember?
Oh, you don't use the Fahrenheit system. Got you. 2,000 F to Celsius. So in Celsius, that's roughly 1,200 degrees Celsius.
Okay, I'm sorry for the extra work, but
No, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. You know, I have to remember you're from Spain and you use
Portugal.
a functional system while we're sitting here using like 16 to measure things.
I'm Portuguese, not Spanish.
So yeah, no. Sorry, Portuguese. I apologize. I do. What was it? Iberian Peninsula region.
Yes, the Iberian Peninsula, which encompasses both Spain and Portugal. But
I apologize. Not trying.
It's fine. Most people, it's fine. I don't bring it up often, so it's fair enough. Just okay. A small correction.
So, alright. So, basically, in 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, equal to 5,537.78 degrees Celsius.
But you don't need that high. You don't need to go that high to make a functioning sword, though.
All right then. I'll keep that in mind.
Here I have a Ronin Do Pro number 14. It has a 30-inch blade, 1060 through hardened steel. And to compare, I have a Ronin Medieval Longsword number 2 with a 36-inch blade made of 1075 spring
Actually, I got
steel.
a quick question.
Most videos online I see of people comparing longswords to katanas seem to be from a European perspective. Mostly of people sick and tired of all the praise katanas get.
European... Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Okay, got a quick question for you, Darc.
What?
I meant for Green.
What's the question?
Okay, so why is it that... I get the point of the European longsword's crossguard, because it's basically to make sure your hand doesn't get cut off when you're basically about to... So your hand doesn't get cut off. But why didn't the Japanese adopt something, at least a little something similar? Because it would make more sense, because that crossguard couldn't protect you against much.
Well, again, material availability.
Okay.
So again, going back to the forging processes, right? Longswords could afford to make long, jutting things out, right?
Okay.
Yes.
Subas,
in fact, they could actually be able to make crossguards that are basically, long enough.
That was what I was saying. Subas, that little guard piece that you see on katanas, wasn't reinforced, had to be made like that so it could, catch blades and use to deflect.
Mm-hmm.
Crossguards could afford to essentially have extensions like that because the steel is strong enough to take larger blows like that. A. B. And this is one of the funniest things about longswords, right? That's actually a very early longsword. So when longswords were transitioning from war swords to dueling longswords, a longsword's actually evolved from that. So how you see with katanas they have a suba. Sometimes longswords had dueling rings. So imagine those rings, on the inside space where you see the crossguard, right?
Yeah.
They would have almost a suba formation of rings right there. So similar to how you might see in rapiers, how they have a basket hilt, but instead of just two round circles on the side. Okay. So that actually offered incredible hand protection as well. And not only that, this again, later longswords, they started adding leather straps towards the it's called the shield part, so right above the crossguard, so you can do half swording easier, as well as they have things called parry hooks. So think about, with this Y-hand has two pokey things in the middle of the blade.
Yeah.
So imagine just being in a blade bind, and then you just pivot your longsword across and just stab somebody in the eye with that.
Okay.
It's just so stupid. It's just stupid what you can do with longswords. But again, they're using basic longsword, fine. So we're going to ignore all the things that longswords acquired after, 300 years of development. Let's just ignore that. But so, continue.
Let's continue.
Oh boy, I believe there's a bias in this video.
Movies and anime.
Oh, don't worry. I love katanas.
Some sort of mystical weapon capable of slicing through anything, which is obviously ridiculous. But I can't help but notice a hint of resentment when it comes to these comparison videos. Not to mention the obvious bias Europeans have when comparing an ancestral sword from their own culture to another. I will give props to Scholargrim though. He made a video addressing his own biases against katanas, and I respect his ability to be introspective and honest about it. I put a link to it down in the description if you guys want to check out his perspective.
Pause
it. Before you answer this, I want to say that the link to his video will be down below in my descriptions, so that way I'm not just to let everybody know.
If I hate katana so much, why would I recreate the entire moveset of Sekiro, Al, Suralon, Ishin, katanas, and I'm about to try to, once the eldenring DLC drops, if they add more katanas, I'm going to recreate the moveset with real katanas. Why? If I hate them so much, why would I still do that?
I think this is more along the lines of European, so more of my area, because this is it for them. It's basically like a sort of cultural heritage. That the longsword was basically.
I know. No, I know for yeah, from a European standpoint. But no, I'm saying for me, like I don't hate katanas. I think they're really cool. I train with somebody who studies Japanese martial arts, and I have great respect for the people who study it. And I've been practicing it. I would say both secondhand, firsthand, because I've met a lot of the teachers who do that. So it's like I'm not disrespecting the weapon because I'm only. Does that makes any sense? I practice with people who study it.
Yeah, I get it.
Wait, what'd you say?
No, I get it. I said I get it.
So trust and believe. I don't hate the katana. It's one of those things where it's like agreed. It's because most people act like katanas are like the greatest thing. Like everyone, like for example, you always see in anime Iaido jutsu, which is called the quick draw techniques, right? They act like it's the most impressive thing, and you would often see in anime how people would go into stance, like they would resheath their sword to do an Iaido stance attack, right? Do you know how stupid that is?
Very stupid.
Do you know how stupid it is to resheath your sword in the middle of a
dressing up into an actual robber in a Batman costume and expecting you to be a superhero?
Do you know what Iaido Jutsu was invented for? Do you know why? And oh yeah, guess what? Europeans had it too. FYI. They didn't call it that, but they had it too. But do you know why it's invented? When you're walking down the street and someone jumps you, and you have to be able to draw your sword and hit them at the same time. It just happened, right? You don't that'd be like you getting in a sword fight, right? Someone's about to stab you. You resheath your sword. Oh wow. Because guess what you can do? You can literally kick their hand while they're drawing their sword out to prevent them from drawing their sword and cut them at the same time. We've done tests like this. You can literally stop people trying to do this anime BS by kicking them, literally putting your sword in the path and where they would try to block, or just stabbing them straight up. Because if your point's in their face, what's stopping you from stabbing them? Because their hand traveling to move the sword out of it is not going to be faster than you just stepping forward with your sword in their face. Sure. But that's real. Again, Iaido Jutsu and drawing cuts have their place, but it's mostly like oh crap, I got jumped while I still have my sword in my sheath. You're not going to... It's like putting yourself in a disadvantageous position if you already have your sword up. Makes no sense. Mm-hmm. But, again, that's mostly on the fact that people hype that move and that martial art. That's like people hyping, oh crap, I'm in a bad position. Let me try to reposition technique as, oh, it's godly. No. But no, continue. I'm sorry, but that's continue.
Yeah, continue.
Skull admits many are just sick of hearing how overhyped katanas are, and a lot of them seem to take it personally. What these people don't seem to realize.
Green.
Yeah.
You want to say something?
I mean, I'm agreeing. Again, like I was explaining why I think katanas are, because like they say they can cut through anything. BS. They're pretty bad at it. What was it? The Iaido. They think it's cool and magical. Not really. It's just what you had to do. If someone jumped you and your sword was sheathed. But no, continue.
Mm-hmm. Is that the katana had a massive impact on American pop culture. If you're a gun-toting, rootin', tootin', red-blooded American like me, chances are you fucking love katanas. Because you grew up on martial arts movies, and you're really into Highlander when it first came out. Seriously, if you grew up as a kid in America during the 90s, you were bombarded with the awesomeness of
I don't
katanas.
think that would have been possible
TV,
for a katana
to movies,
like
not
that.
to mention, this is right around the same time that anime came to America in full force.
But you remember, it's movie logic, and movie logic is magical.
I know.
And magical, and by magical, I mean bullshit.
Remember, movie logic is the same logic that you've seen people in full plate armor, which includes chainmail, leather gambesons, metal breastplate, right? And they get stabbed through that. Do you know how physically impossible that is?
It is.
Yeah, that's pretty impossible. Considering I've actually seen how useful a metal-plated armor is.
So it's one of those things where it's like, I don't even trust movies anymore with that. Because it's like, yeah, you watch a movie, it's like, what's the point of wearing armor? If someone could stab through you wearing, like, literally a full kit, what's the point of wearing armor?
And mind you, I've seen videos of basically people shooting metal-plated armor with guns, and that stops it.
And might I add, until guns got really powerful, metal breastplates were still being worn until, like, the 18th century. Like, literally, they were good enough to stop like low impact rounds. That's because armor was still good even when guns were around. Oh, and might I add, the funniest thing, right? Zweihanders were around when guns were around, so you know.
Yeah, I get it. Let's continue.
If that's stupid, that makes you feel stupid. Like you're watching Dark Souls, you be like, wait a minute, we have Zweihanders. Why don't they have guns yet? Wait a minute, elder cannons. Never mind. Spoke too soon.
Oh boy.
To a young, impressionable kid, the cool factor of katanas was undeniable. Back then, there was just a level of mystique about katanas because we knew so little about them. It was a mysterious sword from a faraway land that looked like nothing we'd ever seen before. Growing up as an American...
Pause it. I like how
like nothing we have ever seen before.
Scimitar, Kriegsmessers,
Scimitar, an extra very long knife, maybe?
All right, okay. Dark. I mean, green.
Yeah.
Okay, scimitars are a cutting blade like katanas.
So the little bit different profile, but essentially, so how katanas kind of like think about like a fingernail curve. Scimitars vary, so some of them are more similar to like that in depth, but sometimes they're more like straight and then curved towards the end. So it just depends on where you find them from and what country from. But like idea of single edge curved blade existed worldwide pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not like you can literally get a bone and like a curved bone and sharpen an edge. You basically got a katana.
Let's continue.
Imagine if you sharpen a boomerang, I'd be like, "Hello there, I am Boomerang and I have a katana boomerang."
Let's continue, guys.
Have a cultural sword of our own. So we were constantly popular.
Pause it. It's a little lagging on my end.
Alright. And now, mind you, I think the whole reason why katana got so popular is not necessarily the sword itself, but really that's running a multitude of hype.
Okay, you're good now.
Okay, repeat that. You kind of like roboted for like 5 seconds.
So it wasn't just me.
Alright, apologize for that. Sorry, I went into cyberspace there. Whoop beep boop. All right, now, I would say the katana isn't necessarily I would say the the savior sword of everything, because mind you, I think the reason why the katana is just so loved is mainly not because of the sword itself, but because of the movies that gave it that sort of hype and mysterious element to that.
Let's also not forget the massive import of anime and Japanese media that came to America after the Second World War.
Yes.
See, I feel like Chinese swords had a similar mystique when like Jackie Chan and like Jet Li movies were popular. I feel like Chinese swords could have had that similar type of mystique if they stayed in the main culture for as long as like anime has.
Yeah, I mean the same could also be said for other weapons of like different cultures, like for example, the nunchucks, and also basically the power staff, and like a prime example of that being influencing American culture would be the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
right? And see,
thanks to that show that it's just thanks to that show that basically gave some of those weapons a lot more, I would say, popularity, mind you.
And I agree. And one of the things I'll say is one of the big reasons why I don't think European weapons are represented in the martial standing is because with Asian cultures, they maintain their martial traditions for thousands of years, for far past when it was like really usable in war. Not saying it's like completely unusable, but essentially they kept those traditions alive. Europeans, for the most part, like once they got like better firearms that were like piercing through breastplates and stuff, most people didn't really care to like keep their fencing. That's why we find them buried in like graves and archives. So it's one of those. I think it's also a fact that essentially longswords and stuff, they're only really now being appreciated because we're now finding the text on how to use them. If that makes any sense.
Let's also not forget, but England is a case because they still have a lot of fencing and European martial arts school clubs and all that.
Yeah, but here's the thing though, and this is sort of the sad thing. So longswords evolved. There's two paths that longswords evolved. They evolved into being more like Zweihanders, large, like basically polearm swords, and then some of them evolved to be more like home defense, dueling rapiers and stuff like that. Believe it or not, S-Stock is actually the S-Stock in the Souls games is actually a longsword. It's a more evolved longsword than a longsword. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what actually ended up happening is outside Battlefield, like longswords, which became Zweihanders, like F-Stocks and then rapiers and like epes, they essentially became home defense, and that became the sport. So essentially, the only thing that was survived like nowadays that kept this tradition are like saber fencing for like up until like the Civil War and stuff like that. Which sabers were not. They evolved from other weapons like curved one-handed swords, so not necessarily long swords, but. Like, yeah, fencing swords. It's sort of like the remnants of what longsword fighting is.
Easy.
But it's, one of those things, again, we had to discover how to fight with these things. Versus, like, it's been taught and, like, kept in, like, family, traditions for, like, thousands of years. So it's kind of like, maybe if we had this earlier discovered, maybe it would be a better appreciated weapon. I don't know.
Let's press play.
Rarely romanticized in American movies. Sure, there were plenty of movies about knights, but their swords were never a focus. They were generally just seen as a tool or weapon the protagonists used. With the exception of Lord of the Rings, which is why many Americans, including myself, became obsessed with medieval weaponry. Let's be honest, nobody actually thinks a katana can cut straight through another sword. Anyone who does is either 9 years old or sleeps with an anime body every night. Alright, with that out of the way, let's take a look at the pros and cons of these legendary swords. And to help me do this, my buddy Brandon, who practices HEMA, drove down to do some sparring with me to see how these swords stack up against
I want to ask
each
you
other.
a question.
Keep in mind, neither of us are
sorry.
experts, and we're not...
I was watching a video of Soulstuber in response to this, but this is why I thought it would be cool for your end. But he said that basically, in terms of basic footwork, basic footwork between a longsword and a katana are very similar, correct? Like how you
practically from someone. Okay, here's the thing. Let me tell you something. There's two parts to this, right? Mm-hmm. I first trained with my friend who studies Japanese martial arts before I started doing longsword and European combat, right? Mm-hmm. I took the footwork I learned there and applied it to longsword combat. So technically, I actually learned how to use a katana before I learned how to use a longsword. And only a handful of people were able to discern that I was using a Japanese way of fighting in terms of my footwork. Only a handful of people, still to this day, can tell that my footwork is actually more Japanese-based than European-based.
Okay.
Let that sink in for a moment. It's that similar to the point that only people who've studied both systems can tell. That's the only way you can tell the difference. If you're just a casual person who doesn't know, you would think it's indistinguishable.
Okay.
So we argued from what our studies were, the strikes, the way you move, it's about like 95% the same. The only differences comes from the different lengths of the blade, right? So based on the length difference, it influences how deep you step. That's about it.
Thank you.
No, if that makes any sense.
It makes sense. Thank you. I want to just get that out of the way quickly.
Not trying to kill each other. I just figured a comparison video wouldn't be fair without actually
it's a nice spez
pitting these swords against one.
I have that spez jacket. It's a spez heavy.
Add.
Oh boy. Well, great. Great. All right, no one cares. All right, moving on.
Right off the bat, you can tell the longsword has a significant range advantage,
allowing
the longsword user to pressure me with thrusts while at a relatively safe range.
Don't know why I didn't go for the aux
thrust,
but
skilled
okay.
enough, they could potentially stay out of kill range of the katana, all while still being able to strike at their opponent. Also, since the blade is double-edged, the longsword allows for rapid follow-up attacks with the back of the blade, making it more unpredictable.
Pause it.
So, there are entire family systems in the longsword. So there's two edges. There is the long edge and short edge. The long edge is the edge that's closest to the opponent. The short edge is the one that's closest to you, right? Mm-hmm. There are techniques called duplaren, which is where you essentially roll the inside edge around and then hit someone while they're inside their guard. So basically, there are techniques literally where, say you bind with somebody, right? You know that traditional thing of like you bind with someone's like, oh, I hate you, I hate your mother, I hate your family, right?
Yeah.
The longsword's literally designed, so imagine you have your edge pressed to someone, right? You just rotate your inside edge and just cut somebody in the head. Just from literally getting in that position. It's so stupidly effective. And he did those techniques against him because he has a double edge. If you don't have a double edge, you can't really do much of that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go back, you actually get him doing it.
I got a question later because I'm curious, but I'll ask it later. Continue.
Let me get a shirt on and actually get a longsword and then show you these cuts.
And when it comes to defense, the longsword's imposing crossguard provides much more reliable protection.
No, if you want to do it now, actually, just if you want to do it, I don't mind. It's still like Darc and I've got some time. Just not too busy.
And in a pinch, the crossguard can also be used as a bludgeoning weapon if your opponent gets too close.
Actually, why don't you show me after the stream?
The longsword's biggest advantage, in my opinion, is that practically every strike doubles as a block, which greatly increases your survivability in a duel. The longsword is extremely versatile. It really can do it all. But with that said, the length of the sword generally makes it slower and less viable in close-range combat than the katana.
Pause.
Yes, I knew you were going to pause at that moment. Yep.
So, okay. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can.
So,
Darc,
two things on that.
Hang on. Darc, you there?
Yeah, we're here. I can hear him well.
Okay.
So, the katana is a slightly smaller blade, so because of that, it does have a bit faster maneuverability. However, do you know what you can do with the longsword to compensate for that?
More flexibility?
Well, no, you have range, you have flexibility, but do you know what the longsword can do that you don't see too much in katana?
What?
Hello? Do you know what you can do with a longsword that you don't really see too much of in katana?
What can that do, Professor?
Please do tell us, Professor.
You can do what's called half swording, which adjust the position. And basically, it basically functions like a polearm, smaller weapon, and then it has that quote unquote fast maneuverability. You can have all that by just adjusting. Hold on, I'm getting my fencing jacket. I don't feel like putting on a shirt. Hold on.
We got a special treat tonight, guys.
Ooh. Now, don't mind me. I'm just staring at the pink elephant in the background and reminding myself of what a movie, Dark Man was by Sam Raimi.
Or basically a sort of an elephant.
I don't know why, but as soon as I see a pink elephant, I can just immediately see Liam Neeson just going batshit insane.
That never came to my mind before.
Ever seen Dark Man?
Nope, sadly.
Okay, so basically, it's the missing link of between when Sam Raimi went from making horror films to superhero films. It's basically the connection between it. It's good practical effects. It's goofy. It's corny, but it's very fun to watch. As basically Liam Neeson as it's the main hero or vigilante, mind you. And
well, we gotta spend
all right.
Hold on. Let me just make sure my camera works out here.
All right. I'm sorry about doing this to you, Green. Thanks.
No, you're fine. It's what I live for. Okay.
We're gonna just switch to Green's screen.
Hold on. How do I get this call? Let me go back to the call screen. Okay. Flip. Wait, is it flipping to me? Can you see me?
It's off.
It's off?
Yeah, cameras.
Is it on now?
Yeah. No, it's just the yard.
Can you see?
Yeah, we can see.
Can you see?
Yeah, we can see you.
Mm-hmm.
Two edges. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can see
you. We can.
Bind, and then hit with that edge. Bind, hit with that edge. Bind, low. You literally do so much.
We got a special treat, folks.
Very much.
That's pretty cool, actually.
Say again?
That was pretty cool.
I'll just keep this on, so if he shows more things. So, but again, the point I was trying to make is, I'm not for sure if you're paying attention, but did you see I was rolling the blade to use the other edge to cut? So if someone bound with my sword, instead of just going like, I hate your mom, roll around, use the other edge, cut.
Gotcha.
Okay, so continue. If anything else happens, I'll go back out.
Bash your opponent, but with the shorter, more nimble katana, you can thrust and slash at full efficiency, even in close range. Keep in mind there are an ass load of different types of long swords. Here,
thank you.
Part of how many different types.
Okay, he pointed out
all those swords.
Remember, I mentioned that longswords evolves considerably.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least he pointed it out. Okay, I forgive him now. I'm not upset with him anymore. He pointed it out.
Let's
continue.
You've gotten the Green Knight seal of approval, my friend. He will no longer hunt you and basically do a, duel with you to the death.
Let's continue, Darc.
God damn, that's a lot of variety. It's like the fucking Baskin Robbins of swords. For this comparison, I chose what I consider to be the quintessential hand-and-a-half long sword.
Now, is that usually the Quentin example?
Darc? Green?
Green.
Wait, repeat the question?
Is that that sword the quintessential longsword?
Now, this sword right here, the one he chose, is that usually the poster boy, good bread and butter, go-to example for what a longsword is?
So that's like okay, let me actually show you mine that I'm using. So it's actually a sword that's more from an earlier design before they started adding other stuff. So it's not bad, but some of the things that they sort of added later. So you see this part right here?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Most dueling longswords have this, which are, they could be more spiked out for offense, or this is for defense. This is called the shield of the sword. So this part was flared out more, so it can help catching blades right up here. So this is what my longsword is more common what you would see in modern day, like tourney fencing. Does that make any sense?
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Very much.
But it's not bad. It's still a pretty, most people would recognize. That's a common design. Not saying it isn't.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well,
I chose what I consider to be the quintessential hand-and-a-half long sword. And if you disagree with me, I respect that. You probably have some pretty valid reasons for it.
Thank you.
My video. Damn video. Now, what the katana lacks in range, it more than makes up for in speed. The shorter, lighter blade allows for lightning-fast strikes, but means
he traded a hand hit for a head hit,
which can be extremely dangerous. Which brings me to my next point. In my opinion, the biggest difference between these two swords is not their blades, it's their fighting style. While the longsword relies on range and focuses on defensive cuts that double as blocks, the katana is a much more brutal weapon. A warrior who lives by the code of Bushido does not fear death. Live by the sword, die by the sword. I cannot stress enough how dangerous an armed combatant is when they do not.
Okay, pause it. So he said katana. Was it longswords are as brutal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really? Well, if we want to go full barbaric, do you know what longswords have on the end? Do you know what this is called?
A pummel, basically, where you could basically hit someone.
So you mean to say that these can't be barbaric? People literally held these things backward just to bludgeon you to death with them. And guess what? Do you think these cross guards right here, what do you think these were used for?
You could basically use them like...
making balloon animals. 42!
These are literally eye gougers. Imagine you're binding, right? I hate your mom. Okay, swivel around the bind, stab someone in the eye with your cross guard. Well, guess you don't have functionality in that eye anymore. It's on my sword now. I just yanked it out.
Let's keep this PG-13, guys.
I'm sorry, but he said longswords can't be brutal, but I'm just saying that's what longswords can do. So
have you even seen what a great sword is?
Limbs and heads go flying with those things in real life. Okay, continue.
All right. Now, before side note, has any one of you seen actually Yojimbo?
No.
It's actually a pretty nice film, and I actually recommend you actually watch it. It's a nice piece of history, and I think it's actually pretty well done. Other than I would say the amount of swordplay that can be misleading at times, but it's still a very good narrative, mind you.
All right.
Mhm.
No.
The katana is a perfect encapsulation of that philosophy. End the fight in a single devastating strike or die in battle with honor. To a samurai, nothing is more important. Similar
pause
to the
it.
Vikings who were known.
Why do you think you'd want to kill somebody in one strike?
Because you don't want to have an extended fight because it increases you dying.
Yep. Also, if the katanas weren't as durable as longswords, why else would you not want to... why would you not want a prolonged fight?
Yeah.
Increased chances of your sword getting broken.
Mm-hmm.
We'll play.
Known as the most vicious, fearsome warriors in all of history. While the longsword is built for picking out weak points in your enemy's guard, the katana is balls to the wall victory or death. Now, we're not here to argue who's a better fighter, knights or samurai, because that's an impossible thing to test. I just thought it was important to mention because, again, no other comparison video I've seen has ever factored this in. Alright, that's enough chit chat. Let's see what these swords can do.
Wait, that wasn't... The hell is this?
Demonstration.
They're actually going to be using it to cut.
Tatami
Okay.
mat.
Yeah.
Yes, if you're wondering, I'm not going to act like we don't do this. Guess what we use to cut when we have our live blades?
What?
Tatami mats. We're not going to act like we don't steal.
Fair enough. Let's get.
We don't... I'm not going to act like we don't steal.
Good man. Good man. Good man. I will say, both are aesthetically pleasing, but I don't know what it is about a longsword, but I like
Okay,
it.
so we're
I
gonna
like its
test out
design.
these swords and see how well they cut. Looking at specs online is one thing, but actually wielding the sword and doing some real cutting, is a whole different story. A lot of long swords, high-end wise, don't really come with scabbards, but this one does. It's not super nice or anything, but it is nice that it comes with one.
Speak for yourself. That's beautiful. A nice black leather.
It's got this kind of cheap sword belt. Generally, any longsword that comes with a scabbard is going to have a pretty shitty sword belt. But, you know, it's cool. It comes with one. Not bad for the price.
Just replace the belt. Something custom made.
It's a nice blade. It's a handsome blade. It's got a bit of distal tapering, which is actually pretty impressive. It's got a genuine leather handle, which is stitched nice and tightly. I will say the crossguard, the edges are pretty sharp. If I ran my hand really quickly across it, I could...
I wonder why they're sharp.
Same for the pommel.
And mind you, you're not. I don't think you're supposed to actually wear them without wearing gauntlets or anything.
Because, okay, here's the thing. Longswords were invented during time of armored fighting. Pommel's there because, I am fighting another armored opponent. Why would I cut and slash at you? I basically have an improvised extended war mace. Okay, flipping this backwards now.
Yeah. Mind you, it was not a time where they were cutting fleshy opponents. They were cutting basically fleshy opponents in a giant exoskeleton.
Yes.
So, yeah.
But, you know, you're paying $350 for a battle-ready sword. You can't really expect too much. But overall, pretty nice. The balance is a little weird on this sword. The balance is about here, which you really want the balance to be at the last.
Pause it. So let me tell you where my balance point is on mine, real quick. My balance point is roughly here. So like right here. Actually, let me hold it here. Roughly. So you see the blade profile, right? Yeah. My balance point is roughly here. So if I were to hold it out, it's roughly here, closer to the handle. You don't want it to be towards the center end, because basically that makes it more like a mace in terms of what's it called, like a momentum. You want it closer to the handle because, again, longswords prioritize having wrist control, right? If it's too far out, that means you're giving a lot of your control to the end of the blade. You want to be, because like think about with rapiers and stuff, how they focus on like that wrist movement to get a thrust or whatever. Longswords predated them, so they focused on that control versus being end heavy.
4 inches of the blade.
I hope you're having fun, Knight.
Not awful, not unusable, but not a refined sword by any means. Balance is really important when it comes to swords.
Yeah.
Because even a lightweight sword that is poorly balanced will feel strange and unwieldy in the hand. Even a heavy sword, if it's balanced properly, can be wielded really quickly.
So you guys think Ultra Greatswords are slow? Let me take out my Ultra Greatsword to show you how fast I can swing that thing.
Yeah, I remember you showing us that a while back.
Yeah, Ultra Greatswords are slow. It's scary how fast you can swing those things.
Super clean cut, but
yeah, you can usually thank that to gravity.
Little effort I can put into it while still cutting it.
Clean
The
cut.
blade is so thin, it really travels to the target very nicely.
You want me to comment on his cutting technique?
Sure. This is your moment to shine.
Pause. So his first 2 cuts were decent. His final cut, so what happens is, do you see how the tatami mat sort of looks all like scraggly right there?
Yes, it looks very scraggly.
It looks scraggly because the way he cut, he essentially didn't keep edge alignment through the whole cut, so he actually like wobbled it slightly, so it like pulled it slightly out. That's not the sword's problem. That's a user error, not a sword error, if FYI. No, his first 2 cuts were good. I'm not saying, look, I've had bad cuts. Everyone has bad cuts. It's just the virtue of what happens. But his first 2, if you go back, his first 2 cuts were pretty clean.
Okay.
But he wobbled a bit, and that threw off his edge alignment, which is why it makes that scraggly pattern. But you saw the first 2 were pretty clean.
Yes.
But you can't put the sword on that. Like, that's a clean cut. That's a very clean cut.
It's pretty good. What I'm noticing about this longsword is that because this pommel is one of these rounded pommels, and it's kind of got sharp edges, holding onto it like this and slicing, you feel that vibration in your hands and it kicks back into this hand. Well, I wouldn't want to really
That's probably how he messed up his
for
edge.
too long. It just feels a little weird. I guess this is why they wear gloves. Longswords generally don't tend to be razor sharp because they're more for thrusting.
That's a clean cut.
And you kind of want to be able to half-hand it and stuff like that, but
Half sorting.
it's actually surprising how well it cuts for how sharp it is, because it's not that sharp. It's not terrible at cutting, not great. I'm sure in the footage you'll notice that when I swing the sword in slow motion, the blade has got some wobble to it since it is spring steel. With the blade moving like that, having your edge alignment.
If I remember correctly, and do correct me if I'm wrong, that's because the sword is basically absorbing the impact, correct? So
Yeah, it's absorbing the kinetic force.
Like that. Because basically, so the reason why it springs like that, so think about it like this. So let's look at mine for a second, right? Oh, my thumb's blocking it, right? This part needs to spring, because look what I'm hitting it on. I'm hitting what's called the flat of the blade. If this wasn't springy, this would break, because if it was too firm, it would break. But if you hit with the edge, what do you notice it not doing when you hit with the edge right?
Shaking.
It's not breaking or bending.
Yeah.
It's not bending. It's do it if you hit with the flat. If you hit with the flat, it's going to do that. That means he's not hitting full edge. If he hits full edge, there's enough reinforcement throughout the whole steel for it not to have to do that. So that's again mostly an error thing.
So
not calling it bad.
It's just a little
Again,
off.
we all make mistakes. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say I have a perfect record of cutting tatami mats, but that's more of a user error than a sword error.
So you will probably be able to cut more without any vibration. Much
Yes.
vibration. Okay.
Without much. You still feel it because it's still going through an object. But it's just an edge alignment thing. You just have to practice at it. The more you practice it, the easier it gets.
Okay.
Now, while I do appreciate a good sword, I'm usually more of a bludgeoning type of guy.
Well, swords, long swords got a bludgeon in. Just hold it backwards, put on some gloves.
That is also true. That is also true.
You have your extended war mace.
Yeah, there is that.
That's that.
Perfect is going to be more difficult. That plus the fact that the handle's shorter, it doesn't allow enough leverage or as much leverage a katana. It's not going to do great at slicing and slashing.
Pause it.
But that's fine.
Yeah, I will actually agree that is a user error on the not user error. Sorry, that's the blade error. Because if you look at my pommel, right?
Mhm.
My pommel's not what's it called? Wait, where is it? Where is it?
That's right
My
there.
My pommel is not that circle thing. It's very knobbish, right? So because of that, I can adjust the grip on my hand, right? So I can grip here, I can grip lower, put my hand resting on the end like that. So, that's in that case, that is a sword thing, because depending on how you get your pommel made, you can essentially get that leverage. So I won't say that's his fault. That's definitely on the swords. That makes any sense.
Fair enough.
But you can get the extended leverage if you want, if you get a pommel that is easier for you to grip like that.
A more flattened pommel, not a rounded pommel.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So?
Because long swords are meant for thrusting, but it can get the job done, which is cool. I like the sword. The reaches can't be understated. Having that extra, 5 inches of reach is really nice. All right, so now I got a double mat. This one has no rod in the center, so it's just 2 tatami mats. It's a big boy.
Unfair, don't you think?
Here's my question: did he do that for the? I don't think he did that for the longsword. Did he do that for the longsword?
I don't know.
But
No, he used the single tatami map, not the double one.
If you look at the core, so I'm not sure if he changed the core of it. I'm not sure if he's changing it for. I don't know why he is changing it mid-test. Let me see.
That's not a fair, observation, but
Let's see where it's going with this.
all right,
Waterlogged, making it so much heavier. There we go. Man, even doing practice swings, this pommel really.
He's gonna use.
Oh, he's doing it with.
Okay.
all right.
Okay, here we
All
go.
right, let's see
Let's
it.
see. Keep an eye on the technique.
Pause it. So there's one thing I will say that's wrong. He's doing what's called a peasant strike, where he sort of hammer fists it through. That's not the proper way to swing a longsword for the most basic technique. The most basic technique is called an Uberhau, or the overhead from the day strike, basically, right?
Mhm.
So, let me show you how he's swinging versus how you're supposed to swing. Because this is why his edge alignment is probably not the best when it comes to this, right? Let me put it in a good spot. Okay.
Yeah, at least I'm happy that you're having fun.
That's what I do.
Hey, Darc.
Yes, I'm glad we're actually getting a good demonstration.
So,
This is both entertaining and
Educational.
informative.
he pulls the sword like this, right? To his side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
If you think about how the blade travels when he goes, he's pulling it this way. Versus when you're supposed to pull it in the front of you.
Oh.
How do you think that affects the dynamic of the cut versus going here versus going straight to like down here?
You got a more cleaner cut if you go with it straight downwards.
Yep, you get a cleaner cut.
And it's basically less resistance on the edge. That basically
less resistance because he's pulling it across his body. You're supposed to pull it more so towards the center of your body when you cut.
Question.
Yes.
Why does it give less resistance if we do it that way and such?
Well,
Does it have to do something with the alignment with the sword, or does it have to do something with the actual stance itself?
So it's a few things. It's a combination of stance, biomechanics, and the blade itself, right? Because think about your body, right? It says so hold your arms straight up with your hands together. If you pull your hands so it goes to the side of your body, watch how your hands will automatically like shift as you pull to get to that point versus you pull it towards your belly button. You can just see how your hands just change.
Yeah,
so it's a combination again.
It gets a little shorter.
Your body mechanics of how you pull your arms down with the edge alignment. Because when you pull it towards your belly button, you keep your edge in that same angle.
Position.
Versus when you pull it sideways, it sort of drags it sideways.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So that's a user error.
Okay.
Again, I'm not acting like he probably like trained specifically for doing this. So again, it's something you have to learn. Again, it's not easy. If this is his first few times of doing this, he's doing very well. Like I'm not going to discredit him.
Okay.
But I'm saying it's just one of those things you have to just practice. Once you do enough times, it gets much easier doing this.
I think after this, I'm gonna edit this video and basically put this part as its own separate part of my YouTube channel. You okay with that, YouTube?
I'm fine.
Oh yes. Also, make sure to edit some of the funny parts as well.
This part will basically be its own segment. Basically, I'll just
again. I'm not hating on him. He has a great respect for it. Okay. I'm not coming in and like dissing him. It's just a practice thing.
Okay, let's continue.
Drew. Nice. It's pretty clean cut. Not bad. It's funny because with the longsword cuts, you can see some waviness in the cut going through because the blade is made of spring steel, so it's kind of moving, warping a bit as it moves to the target. Nice. It's pretty good. Since the longsword is a thrusting weapon primarily, I'm gonna test it with the thrusts. It's kind of the beauty of the longsword though, because it's made of spring steel, you can thrust the sword and it can bend and it'll just return back to shape. Even while longswords are bounced toward the tip.
So he's not fully committing to the thrust. If he fully committed to the thrust, that sword would go absolutely hard.
It would have basically,
He's being very conservative with this thrust, but in real life, do you know what you do? You spring forward and you impale the person through.
Yeah, you don't basically just go you don't just go, all right, it's going through, pulling it back out. No, you basically launch that through.
Because what happens with longsword combat, when you stab with somebody, right? You go through them. And he says it's not brutal, but let me tell you some of the stuff you can do, right? There are techniques designed where if you stab somebody in the chest, the sword will get stuck in between their rib cage, and you can literally run behind them, grab the sword while it's in their rib cage, essentially yank them down and pull it out.
Jeez, brutal.
And that's not brutal. That's what you could. That's the stuff you could do with this. Stab through the person, use that leverage to anchor them down, and then while they're falling down, use that momentum of them falling to pull it out. That's
that is a very brutal way. And you know what? I may want to try swordsman play after this.
Oh, if you want me to teach you, I got some books that were so literally. I have plenty of books. The biomechanics of how crazy some of the stuff you can do with longsword.
Sounds interesting.
Alrighty. Although I'm more of a bludgeoning guy myself, so I think I'll
turn around. You got it.
Alright, got it.
Because you want to be able to keep your sword tip constantly pointed at your target and be able to maneuver, but it really flies.
Launch it through!
The only real downside I'll say to this
I can give maybe some credence that maybe because it's not securely on the ground that it just basically pushes.
It would fall over.
Yeah, so I could get it that he's being a little conservative. Maybe if it was more anchored, it would probably.
It would take that force. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think the base. If I see his base, I could see. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll give it a little credence. Let's continue.
Sword, specifically this design, is the handle is a little short for my taste. It's hard to get leverage on it, and the pommel is extremely uncomfortable, especially when you swing and you have to stop your cut. This thing just digs straight into your hand. Even with gloves, it's a little uncomfortable. The gloves definitely help, but wielding wise, it's not the best, but definitely gets the job done. Having that extra, 4 or 5 inches of range it's really nice.
I'll take that on the sword, swords, because that pommel does look uncomfortable.
Johnson, why are you naked? Because my.
Wow. All right.
I will edit out the ads. I promise.
No, I agree. That pommel does look uncomfortable, so I'm not going to act like that. I would not be annoyed of that pommel either.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing, though. Pause just one more thing on the longsword there. So again, longswords evolved from earlier designs of war swords, which were a little bit more cumbersome, which came from riding swords, which knights, believe it or not, were predominantly cavalry units. Not saying that there weren't some that fought on foot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's also a case that longswords and swords of this nature could also be used as, like, backup lances as well. So you could just skewer someone. It's like, oh, my lance broke. Well, I also got my longsword. I guess this is going to be my makeshift lance for now.
Okay.
So that you couldn't argue that again, I would say that's an early design because the pommel's not designed really for. Because with longswords, another name, there's separate other names from like bastard swords and hand and a half swords because they were in that in between stage of being true great handers, like Zweihanders and such, and like arming swords, which are like completely one-handed swords. So they're in that medium.
Okay.
So that, again, he's wielding an earlier longsword, which is still more so riding that line to being able to use it more so one-handed. My longsword, because it's like of a later period, because it has the extended handle and the pommels change, this is predominantly a two-handed longsword. So it's a bit later in the time period where you would find my example, if that makes any sense.
Okay. That does.
But no, you can continue.
Katana, Dojo Pro number 14. It's got a really nice, handsome red saya. Pretty cool sword. So we have a through hardened high carbon steel blade, which is why there's no homon, so it's not differentially hardened. I will say this sword is without a doubt the sharpest sword I own. I did not touch it. This is factory sharpness. This thing is scary sharp. It's kind of that sharpness that when you feel it, you're like, oof. I would not want to be on the receiving end of this edge. Since it is through hardened, I imagine it's going to be able to retain this edge really nicely. But very impressive, Ronin Katana. Really, really impressed by the sharpness.
Pause it.
The sword is fairly...
I feel like as if he's going to be praising the katana way too much.
Again, the katana has the benefit of basically getting cheat codes because it was made in modern day times.
It wasn't.
We all remember this point, right?
I guarantee you that. I guarantee that if it was basically a Japanese produced katana, it would be slightly different.
Yeah. So just we're just gonna point out that this katana got basically buffs. Like this man got super soldier serum. Okay.
Okay. Noted.
So just know that. Okay. Moving forward, we can watch the rest.
All right, Mr. Katana, we're putting you in basically the super soldier program. You know why? Because we basically want to make you into more of a superhero, and that's why. Nani?
really light, but it is strangely balanced. Like the balance point is almost mid-way on the blade. Katana, you kind of want it to be around here. And all the fittings on the handle are pretty low quality. I mean, you're paying $350 for a sword. Feels a bit tip heavy. I wish there was a little more weight in the handle. It would be balanced better if you just
you want it better on the handle.
Suba, like a full Suba that was made of iron. It would
This is probably the quality of the Suba at that point, because that would add more weight to it.
This is gonna blast through this target.
He wobbled at the end right there.
It's perfectly smooth. It's just
it's not.
One flat plane as opposed to...
I think we can see bias, can't we?
So, what's this? What's this? What's that, too? What's that? What's this as well?
We know. We can smell the bias, can't we, gentlemen?
Yeah. Just play. I'm just gonna hear him out before I say anything.
Oh boy, I cannot wait for the comment section to roast us alive.
So when I cut with the longsword, it's still made through the target, but because the blade flexes as it's moving through its target, it makes it a little uneven, which would then also cause more drag and potentially make it so that you don't make it through the target. It's very rigid compared to the longsword, which also allows you to pull and follow through a lot better. So I'm going to try to cut through this target with using as little strength as possible. I'm not even going to move my feet.
It wasn't the cleanest last cut.
It wasn't
still,
what it was.
Jesus Christ.
It wasn't the cleanest. That was decent.
Yeah, that's a
That was
sharp
decent
ass
cut.
sword. Ooh.
Now, I'm somehow seeing that he just keeps on praising and praising and praising and praising and praising the katana.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Keep going.
I don't think this channel's legit.
Damn, I wish all my katanas were this sharp. Fuck.
The kid sent it to a blacksmith.
All right, so we got another double mat here. There's no rod in the center, so...
That's a good stance. Now let's basically see.
He needs a wide stance, but eh.
That was so easy.
Okay, that was cleaner.
There's like 0 resistance going through that blade. Handle's pretty thin.
Keep some I'm lagging on my end, but
that was one of his better cuts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one of the better cuts.
Indeed.
But didn't really notice any significant vibrations. Yeah, easy. Oh my god, this thing's a beast.
Now try stabbing with it.
Alright, so obviously the katana is going to be way better at slashing and cutting, this sort of thing.
I'll stab it.
Oh boy.
Well, wait. What was your thoughts?
Stab with it. You stab with the longsword, stab with this.
Okay, it paused. So
curved edge, the longer handle. But let's test to see how well it thrusts.
in your professional opinion, Green,
definitely gets stuck in there.
So, let me tell you the sad thing about this.
Be my guest.
You want me to tell you how to stab? I'm not going to be biased. I'm going to tell you how you stab with the katana, since he's stabbing. What type of weapon is a katana?
Cutting weapon.
So, when you stab, this is what you need to do when you stab with a katana, okay? Hold on, let me pull one out real quick.
Honestly, I think if you've got Darc, I gotta say this. You know what you should do on your YouTube channel for YouTube Shorts?
What?
I've been Green. I'm half tired today.
So look.
Oh yes.
When you stab, right? You don't just stab through, right? You do what's called a flick out. So you stab and flick out. Because what happens is because this is not a I stab through and try to like wiggle it out. It's you flick out. So if you stab in the neck, flick out, and that will because again, primarily a cutting tool. So as a cutting tool, you want to make sure you keep it cutting, even though you're stabbing.
Speaking of, you know what I think you should do for your YouTube short screen, because I think this would be fantastic and more up along your lines. It's like doing some cutting demonstrations with your swords.
If I have enough, because Tommy mats are expensive. I usually just go to my club and we just do cuts with stuff.
Yeah, like that right there. Ask if you can record some cuts and see if it's okay.
Okay, I can do that. Next time I go to the event.
I'm just saying that could be an idea. Not all of them. Just thought it might be a good idea.
The only thing I took away from that was the flicking and wiggling, and boy oh boy, I don't know what's some more. We don't want to flick it out, and doesn't want to wiggle. No,
he's stabbing it straight. If you saw how I stabbed it in a way that it follows the curve. Mm-hmm. So when you pull it, you don't pull it out straight back. You pull it because remember the blade's curved, right? Mm-hmm. If you've used any curved blades before, the edge goes out. So all you do is just move with that blade and we'll cut with it. So instead of again trying to pull it straight out, you would, if you catch it because you caught it on the edge, catch it on the edge, and then use that blade to flick it out because it will fling chunks of the person's neck. I'm not saying the katana is not brutal, because it can do stuff like that. But that's how you stab with a katana, because, again, someone taught me to do it properly, so I will defend the katana when it's not being used properly here.
Okay. That continue.
So, when do I shoot it out of a cannon?
Save that for guts.
I actually got one question that I wanted to save till now. I got this question. You know Demon Slayer, right? You love this show, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Would you say that if they made the sword the metal they use, do you think it could work as a longsword too?
I don't think the metal would really affect anything. I mean, honestly, like to be quite honest with you, with Demon Slayer, I don't know why they're making swords with those things. Like, they could literally okay, their issues fighting demons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how easy it was? Because here's Demon Slayer logic, right? We have Wisteria poison that can kill demons. Don't make Darc guns. We have
Let's get up
right?
close and personal instead of going from a range safe way.
Yeah, I know.
Like, you can literally just snipe these demons and couldn't do anything about it. A. B. Why are they they want to use close personal swords, right? Do you know what's something that people use in Japan and in Europe? There's something called man catchers, right? Where they're like a long, imagine like a U thing with spikes that can catch people, right? Why are you gonna sit here trying to cut off a dude's head that's moving around? We can literally secure them with a man catcher and keep them in place, so then it's easy for them to walk up and decapitate them.
Okay, so here's the question. Another question then. Would
it affect longswords? I don't think it would affect them too much.
No. Yeah. And the other one I wanted to ask is basically this. Would the breathing styles technically work with if a longsword user used the breathing styles? Or no?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes? So if
breathing styles would absolutely... So, the thing with the breathing styles is... So, it's really interesting that you bring that up, because the longsword has different schools of fencing, right? And sort of like the tenets that you see with the breathing styles, right? You know, I know it's like they animate flashes and all sorts of stuff, but there are mirrors to it in actual historical text with how certain masters fought and stuff. So it would work. Okay. Good sword is good sword, if that makes any sense.
Just curious. Let's play. You've answered my curiosity.
Alright, guys, so we got a bunch of demons basically growing up into some sort of a capital right now. We basically need to get rid of these demons fast. Any suggestions? Why don't we go ahead and do a ranged one? Oh, I got it! Why don't we just go in there, guns blazing or swords blazing, and do some blazing techniques, and go in where there's no safety.
Hey,
Genius!
In the latest seasons of Demon Slayer, they actually have a shotgun with those metal.
But you're telling me that's not common practice? Like, do you know how easy it would be to just walk in with a strap with like 5 dudes just blast the demon to bits?
Yeah, it would be easy. Anyway, let's continue.
It's harder to be accurate with stabbing with a curved blade like this. So thrusting with a longsword is clearly easier, faster. You can be more accurate with it, but yeah, I mean the slashing power on this is.
Look how bad that cut was.
Yeah.
Are you gonna ignore that? That was a horrible cut. That was his worst cut all day. Oh my god!
That one was pretty bad. Ooh.
Let's move on. Let's move on. We don't want to get a hernia out of here.
Extremely sharp.
How's that blade sharp?
Job with this through-hardened blade. I'm impressed. I'm seriously impressed. This is not only the sharpest sword I've ever received, but it'll be a long time before this thing dulls.
Oh, why don't you marry it at this point?
You have to do so much cutting to have to sharpen this sword. If you're trying to find a tatami mat cutter, you will be hard-pressed to find a sword for better value. $350 is not a lot to ask for a well-made sword.
Excuse me?
$350. Let's be fair. It's good quality for how much it is cost. So I think it balances it out. If we got
I just feel like as if he could have phrased those words a little bit better.
Fair enough.
Wait, have you guys seen my Zweihander yet?
Yes, I think we did. Well, show it us again. I'd love to see it.
Why don't you show us the beautiful, elegant sword again?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm gonna show the Zweihander real quick. Because again, remember I told you how swords evolved, like long swords evolved down 2 different paths: the rapier path and the true 2-hander path.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So let me pull out my my dueling longsword, and then stack it against the Zweihander real quick. Okay. Zweihander. Hello. So, lengthwise, right? Putting the contemporary longsword. Handles comparable, slightly smaller. Pommel still that same design right there. Crossguard's a bit similar, a little bit more curved in the Zweihander. And this one I have. Oh, remember those parry rings I mentioned?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Leather guards right here, so if you want to use it for half storing hair. Oh, look at these bad boys. Parrying hooks. Look at that. Imagine jamming that in someone's eye.
Ouch.
Oh, and the blade profile. This one's actually sharp. Right here. And yes, I've cut things with this. It cuts beautifully. Also, because it's weighted very much, it's about 6 pounds. And that's the thing. People think that sword's really heavy. Look. I just picked up a Zweihander, one hand.
It's lighter than it looks, that's the thing.
Oh, far lighter than it looks. But it packs a punch. Packs a huge punch.
Well, considering the
only thing, though, is doing murder stroke stuff, which is when you use this pommel. It's a little bit more cumbersome with doing it with like a Zweihander, but it's doable. I wouldn't recommend it.
I would imagine the fact is that basically it needs to be big but light in order to be wieldable by any normal human being. Basically.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, though. Yeah, they're not like in. Okay, here's the thing: the Souls Zweihander is what we would call a parade sword. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
The Zweihanders model in the Souls games are actually like celebration. They're not combat. My Zweihander is a combat Zweihander versus those ones you see, like the ones that are bigger than people. Some Zweihanders can get real big. I'm not saying they don't, but most of those ones were more so for celebrations. But, funnily enough, something that you might like, the Zweihander design from Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 is actually a Montante, which is actually the Iberian Peninsula variation of the Zweihander, if that makes you feel special.
Makes me a little bit special. Thank you for that.
The one you see in Eldenring is more German.
I guess it's gonna make sense considering the fact that European styles did bleed into each other. So basically, they just changed it to fit their local customs and their designs.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, no. Zweihander in Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 is based off of the Iberian Peninsula variation of the weapon, not the German.
Didn't know that.
More you know.
Yep, the more you know.
Well, that's cool, but it pales in comparison to the mighty Glock 17. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, that's good.
Both these swords actually exceeded my expectations. For entry-level blades, they're actually pretty competent cutters, even with their awkward balancing. The katana greatly outperformed the longsword in terms of slashing, but came nowhere near the precision and range of the longsword's thrusts and defensive capabilities. So let me put it in a way you guys can understand. The katana is a pure DPS weapon through and through, while the longsword is a more balanced weapon meant for a tank. Now ask yourself, does one's role make one party member?
Any comments there, Green?
Okay, do you know what's the funny thing about this? He says longswords are more for tanks, right? So there's entire books. It's called Blossfechten, which is the art of fighting without wearing armor. Mm-hmm. Okay? Yeah, I know that sounds absolutely stupid, but there's literal manuals on how to fight with longswords without armor, right?
That sounds something Lemmy Solo her would do and read religiously.
Absolutely. Let me tell you. Imagine reading these longsword manuscripts, right? And then you see people basically dressing with like the most goofiest looking pants and just fighting with longswords. People are crazy back then.
I would imagine.
Yeah, maybe that's why it's so terrifying to see no level guy with no armor on with a giant sword and it just wrecks you.
That does kind of sound funny.
No, but that existed historically. How to fight with larger weapons without wearing armor, and if you're wondering, it usually involves just running through people with the point of the sword because you just basically run them down because they can't do too much. They can't really. Sure, yeah. Mobile.
Sorry.
What about a gun?
Oh, drop it, Darc.
Like I said. Zweihanders were used during pike and shot. So pike and shot, people had pole arms and guns. But still, Despite that fact, Zweihanders still were there. People still walked around with those things, which is kind of hilarious to think about. Like, imagine guns are around, right? People say, "Oh, swords went away when guns came about." Well, people just got really big.
Let's wrap this up. It's getting pretty late for me. It's almost 1:30 already.
Better than the other? The answer is no. They both have their place and their intended purpose, and some people just gravitate towards one more than the other. It's like comparing a 1911 to a Glock.
Hey, there's my clock!
Sure, there are clear advantages on the surface to the more modern Glock, but what it really comes down to is the person wielding it. Just because a Glock can hold more
Man,
rounds
look at
in the
those
magazine
beauties.
doesn't make the 1911 obsolete, and it definitely doesn't mean it'll beat it every single time. I personally gravitate more towards katanas because of my martial arts background, and growing up, I was a disgusting little weeb.
But
hold on, I gotta rewind that. I gotta rewind that again,
Nice
please.
to him, Darc. Darc, to be
That
nice to the
I gotta
boy.
say, that's a really nice cosplay. I'm not gonna actually lie. That's a really nice cosplay.
Does that make a katana better than longsword? No. I'm not self-centered enough to think my preference as fact, and neither should you. At the end of the day, both of these swords are products of their age and culture, refined through centuries of warfare. So saying one is far superior to the other is like some kid on a playground saying their dad could beat up your dad, or that Xbox is better than PlayStation. It's completely foolish and generally rooted in childish bias. So which sword is better? The answer is neither. These swords are polar opposites. They both have their strengths and weaknesses. These swords are so different that in a real-life setting, it would all come down to who is the better swordsman. But as you...
I'm going to stretch this a little bit, and I'm going to probably get a lot of bad comments down below the comments. But if a katana was brought to Middle Ages Europe, or late Renaissance, early Renaissance, around that time period, would it be fair to say that the katana would look some sort of like a saber or something? Saber long?
To answer your question, Kriegsmesser. Let me actually pull up a picture of this. Basically, Europeans had it, so before anyone says, oh, katanas, people would literally look at, this is literally the sword that Europeans had that basically was the equivalent of their katana.
I can't get it showed, but I will see the picture in my...
I'll put it in Discord.
Yeah,
it's called a Kriegsmesser.
They won't be able to see it, but I can see it later.
Basically, think, you know the sword from Bloodborne, the Shikage?
Shikage?
Yes, I do.
Let me guess,
it's
that's...
Kriegsmesser. Everyone says a katana. No, it's a Kriegsmesser. That's the Kriegsmesser.
Okay, so it would look like a weird Kriegsmesser.
Yeah,
basically,
people wouldn't bat an eye at it.
Cool. Thank you for making sure I didn't look like a fool.
You know, we don't fight with swords anymore, so it literally doesn't matter. So in conclusion, try to keep an open mind, because not everything has to be a competition, especially things that are no longer relevant.
So let me actually tell you something. My final point on all this, right? Okay, you guys ready?
All right.
The person who I've been learning Japanese martial arts with, who is like, I forgot what degree black belt he is in Japanese martial arts, knows many different weapon systems, many different unarmed, armed martial arts system and sabotage, right? Within, like, different systems, right? When it comes to these areas, right?
Uh-huh.
He's been studying these arts for decades and has a great value of his knowledge base. Like, he basically is very well versed in his craft. Guess what? Guess what he would say?
What?
He would take a long sword over a katana any day.
Really?
Oh!
Why? Did he tell you the reason why?
There's two reasons why he said. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Double-edged that versatility is insane. Having two edges, insane, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, he was able to use a longsword like a tomfa. Like, my sword is now a tomfa.
Oh, God, it's so basic. Oh, no, He doesn't stop.
So this is someone who's a more experienced martial artist than me. Said they would prefer to have a longsword because versatility have double edges, and also they have a mini. Well, not a mini, but they have basically a tonfa. They also use it. Oh, you remember Murder Stroke holding it backwards? They pretended crossguard was an equivalent of a naginata, and was using the crossguard as like the crossguard of a naginata. He was like, "This is literally all I want in a weapon."
Ouch.
Ooh,
that's
that's
so
I'm
good.
gonna have a lot of people who are big fans of katanas if they see this video basically have my head. There you go. Scratch that. They'll have your head, not mine.
Ooh. Prepare the pitchforks and torches! We are going on a witch hunt!
The witch hunt would be for you, Green.
That's fine. That's fine.
Anyway, let's listen up to this. Let's wrap this up quickly.
Alright. Thanks for watching, guys. Be nice to each other in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.
I'll read
And
the
I don't-
comment.
And we
Like,
can the stream.
I don't think they're gonna be nice in the comments. I'm just gonna say that straight
And
up.
also,
I don't think
everybody
no one's
who's
gonna be nice in the
watching
comments.
The edited video on this, please be nice in my comments, please. So, we had a fun little stream. In fact, I think this is one of the longest streams we've ever done. 2.5 hours. So, I think we can agree that's... So, how was everything today? What you guys thought of today's podcast?
Oh, it was great. Had fun.
You do...
See what the viewers think. See if they like more stuff like this. If they want me to bring out more weapons.
I honestly would love to do more weapons because I know we talked about Souls, but honestly, I would love to get more of your input on this one. I think I might have another video for you next time if you want to.
Okay.
This is more. It's going to be more about Chinese style weapons versus European weapons, but I think it's a nice break from Japanese from Europe.
And I love being the hype man and such, just adding in the sound effects.
Unless you know someone
I've only practiced in Tai Chi and Chinese arts for only a handful of months, so I can't. Like, I'm not like an expert in Japanese, but I have several years of practice there.
But if you're gonna who's knows somewhat about Chinese swordsmanship, if you bring him on my podcast,
They've been practicing for over a decade. I just know people that is like, hey, can you teach me how to do this? And I just like learn. So I learned Tai Chi standpoint. So Tai Chi focuses on a lot of redirection.
Mm-hmm.
So the way the sword, so it's really interesting because the sword is more so like, okay, you see in watch any Chinese movies when they have these large flowing motions.
Mm-hmm.
That's used more so for displacement and for throwing someone off, and then you slice them when they're exposed.
Okay.
It's actually pretty. It looks pretty.
We did. But if you got any friends who is willing to come on a podcast to explain about Chinese martial arts, I'd love to have them on. It would be interesting to see from this because it's a video from Skullagrim. You know him. So I want to see your thoughts on it, if that's okay.
I'm going to brush up on it a bit more because I'm not the best at it. But the closest representation to a Chinese sword, do you know, what's that, the flowing sword? The one in Elden Ring?
I believe that's the River of Blood. I believe it's something with blood.
River of Blood.
Oh, okay. Oh, the other one. Okay.
It's one of the. It's like a Melania Swordmaster.
Ah, okay.
It's a curved sword. What's it called? But it's a curved sword that actually is very reminiscent of So if anyone plays For Honor, a good example of Chinese swordsman is Tian Di from For Honor. He has pretty good. Because actual Chinese martial artists evaluated the effectiveness of his swordplay, and they largely positive of it. So I use them as knowledge base of how Chinese swordsmanship looks. With my limited understanding, if that makes any sense.
China does. Okay.
But again, I'm not no expert.
Yeah, but Anyway, I want to wrap this podcast up because I'm tired and it's 1 o'clock in the morning for me, everybody. So I'm a little sleepy. But
Take care.
Hang on. I wanted to say wrap your things. I could still do things. So I was gonna say that it was fun talking with you guys again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy that we did something we both all love to do, and I'm actually just enjoyed just sitting here and listening to you explain things, Green. It was basically, honestly, it was nice to hear from your expertise this time. Right, guys? Right, Like,
Yes.
right, Darc?
Oh, I
Yes.
guess. I know I
Very
rapped a
much.
lot.
Oh, no, that
I
was
have
the
many
point.
No.
No. This was actually your moment, my friend. It was a little your moment. And I think next week I will let you take the reins with another sword expert's, you know what I'm talking about.
Opinion on things.
Yeah, I think it'll be good to have some variety on our things on these sorts of things.
Well, if you can find some more sword experts, please bring them here because I will challenge them. We will fight. We'll fly across the country to fight each.
We will. I will also ask if you could bring some of your friends on who are also good with other martial arts, because there is a video about the Chinese Jian, the Jian. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see if he could bring his opinion on a video that someone did comparing the Jian to the rapier. And
So they serve similar functions. Long range, thrusty, pointy sword.
yeah, but okay. Anyway, thank you everybody for joining this podcast, and especially those who are watching it after the stream. I hope you all had great things. Any final thoughts before I close off the stream, guys?
Be good people.
Yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you, you two, so much. And I all hope you have a wonderful day. May the good blood